Hi, Shannon Grimm with Shannon Grimm and Partners, here with Slavi Jordanov because Stanley is slacking.
Hello.
And we've got Andrew Rus here with us from P&D Builders, which some people may say he's the face of P&D. He's the only face I see from P&D.
I don't say that, but I guess other people do.
So Andrew does custom homes through P&D Builder. Those of you who aren't familiar with P&D, been around a long time.
1962.
62, okay, longer than I thought even.
Mm-hmm.
So you were telling us before the podcast about how many homes do you do per year?
We build around 30 to 35 a year.
Okay, so that's as a company.
Yep. And when we're talking about houses in general, it's we try to start at least, I would say that 25 to 30 range, and depending on where the house is finished, we shoot for around 30 to 35 closings a year.
Okay. Yeah, and it's a decent sized company, right?
Yeah.
But you're still keeping your numbers kind of low.
Yeah, and I try to explain it as right-sized, where you can, when you start to take a high-level view and look at a company or building company in general and look at it as a business, and the quantity of homes that individuals or a company can produce, the more you start to bite off, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can swallow it, and you're sitting here with a full mouth and, balls start getting dropped. So when I explain the term right-sized, it means we're not incredibly small, where you're only working with a one-person shop that's juggling all the balls, and it's not a, 80 to 100 home a year operation where it is a massive operation. You start to lose a lot of that.
Some of them are
touch.
doing 400, 600 a year. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
And on the custom end, I'd say on the production end,
Yeah.
we can talk about this a little later, but just that spectrum of
Yeah.
the building side in general of allowing people to make changes, customizing, building on your own lot where every lot is different. There's only so much of that
Every
you can.
lot is different. And sometimes you don't know the characteristics of that lot until you actually get in there.
Right.
So how does your process work a lot of people, they want to build on their own lot. They want to go buy a lot, but they're nervous that lot won't be buildable. Will you go out and check out that lot?
Yeah, we'll do
So
complimentary.
will you do it, or will construction go check it out or whatever?
Yeah, we'll tag team it.
Okay.
And that's the most important thing that you can do very early on
Yeah.
is get out to the
Determine
build
that
site.
lot.
And that's in partnership with not only myself, but our production team as well. Because once I create the instructions for the home, the floor plans, customizations on finishes or details within the home, I'm passing it off to our construction team. So they're a super integral part, even during the design and build process too, by getting out to the lot, looking at elevations, topography, access to the site. We try to do that. It's really easy when nothing's there yet because you can just swing out to the site.
Right.
It take 30 minutes to an hour of your day and gather that information, take everything in, how we're going to design the house, things that we need to look out for, and just doing that very early on as a complementary part of our service that we do.
So, and you do that before they've even written a contract, before they've even determined the house?
Yep.
Okay.
Before
Anything.
the house is even.
Because then you kind of know how much area you can build on, too, once you've been to the lot.
Yep.
You know if there's, flood zone and all that
Right.
kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's a huge part of our process, getting out to the property. You can't just sit at your desk and do everything from your computer.
Right.
There's still a lot of things that we can gather from a computer, just with technology nowadays with satellite imagery and historical satellite images, but nothing beats getting out there, and we do that before we have plans drawn, before we even start talking about what is the final price going to be, because we're going to have to evaluate site costs and how much site costs are going to be, evaluate the price of the land itself, how much does the dirt cost. If a client wants to spend X and they're spending half of it on soil
Very important.
or dirt,
Yeah.
and then they're spending another
Or
10
tree cutting.
Yeah,
Tree
tree
cutting.
cutting, tree clearing, septic systems, and those are all things that we can analyze, evaluate, provide estimates for a client before they even purchase that property, so
That's
that they
nice,
know.
too. They know what their budget is on the actual house.
Mm-hmm.
So before the podcast too, we were talking. I was involved in the sale of, we'll call it land, but it had an old home on it, built in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and that was demoed. Did you guys take care of that demo?
Yeah, within partnership with the clients as well. So when we're looking at buildable parcels, sometimes there are existing structures on it.
Yeah.
So especially in more populated areas.
Right.
Yep.
And this particular piece of property did have an existing home on it. I want to say it was probably from the 19.
I think late 1890s, early 19, because you could tell where it had coal put in. You could tell where there was a coal chute, and then it still had the fuel tanks in there.
Yep.
So it was an interesting house. You remember, on Dublin Road. So that was an interesting house, but it was on 5 acres.
Mm-hmm.
So that was pretty cool.
Yeah. And that, each lot, I would say,
unfortunately, I didn't get to help build that house, darn it. Still salty.
That particular piece of property, though, did have some challenges on it as well. But even before we started construction, we still had to tear down the house. And timing on that is important, too, to make sure that we can, obviously when you remove the existing structure, you can't just leave an excavated hole there. So partnering with the client to help them find fill dirt to help backfill, even just the overall cost and budgeting and knowing who to trust when it comes to the expertise on how to remove that structure, what the cost of it's going to be. A lot of the cost in removing a property isn't in the actual teardown, it's in the removal of the holloway. Yeah.
Right.
I would bet, yeah. So so on average, so that was a pretty small house. It was I'd say it was probably less than 1,000 square feet on the first floor, and it was just a little Cape Cod. On average, on average, how much does that cost to tear down?
I would say between 15 to 20.
Oh, that's not bad.
It's not terrible.
No, I mean, it's not as bad as I would have thought. But did you end up having to clear trees there too and stuff?
We had a few trees that were going to be removed, so we removed a few trees. That lot actually kind of tapered in and narrowed down.
It sure did. It was kind of like whatever that. It was kind of like New Hampshire.
And because that house was so, I would say, older, it did not have any infrastructure to city utilities. So the old tear down, we capped off the well, we filled in the septic tanks, and to try to evaluate how we were going to tap in for sewer, where the sewer was, where the water line was. We had to directional bore underneath the street. And Dublin Road there, I mean, it's a frequently traveled, well-traveled road to where
small road.
Yep, we're accessing the other side. Who's going to directional bore under there? The I would say cleanup, to access the other side and replace or repair any damage that occurred just from.
There's just a lot more than you would think about.
Yep, and it can be intimidating from a client perspective if you don't know, or you don't really know where to start. You don't know who to call, but those are the types of answers that we provide when it comes to build on your own lot, because a client may look at that and go, I just don't want to tackle it. It's something that is out of my wheel well or out of my expertise. And and
they were doing it from Cincinnati essentially too.
Yeah, and they had some, I would say, just family health items going on too,
where little boy.
Being flexible on our end to help them make sure that they knew what was going on through the process, still keeping them involved during the design end. It was at a time where, being flexible with video conferences or calls. So,
it's a beautiful house. Yeah, and I wondered if you were going to be able to tap into the sewer, because
we did.
We were in a house over $1 million on Dublin Road. Remember? And it had sewer and
Yep.
I think it had well too, but brand
Correct.
new home, and they couldn't tap in.
And they couldn't, and it was so close to the road and so close
So
to
close to
houses
the road.
around, which was, you would say, okay, this is good. It's fine to
Right.
To
I
have
mean,
a
it
tap.
had like a setback of maybe 25 feet,
Yeah.
and they still couldn't tap in. We thought that was really interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So Dublin's
The-
interesting.
Yep. And to be able to source and find the main lines and the maps on the
Mhm.
sewer end
Oh yeah, geez.
is
So
a
you
great
don't know
tool as
exactly
well.
where they're at.
Mhm.
Right.
You don't. Okay.
Yeah. When we talk about just maps
New
in general,
communities you have them, but
yeah, Delaware County has a very informative, what we call geographical information system, short for GIS.
oh, yeah.
But that specific house on Dublin Road was actually in Franklin County. So to try to find where the sewer lines were in Delaware County, you can actually see where the sewer lines are at, how big they are, what flow
good
do they
information.
Franklin
take.
just likes to make it
Yeah.
interesting.
So a little bit more, I would say, digging we had to do on that
Uh-huh.
side with phone calls or emails. But the sewer line or the port that we tapped into was on the adjacent property, and we were able to access it through an easement and come, I would say, pretty close to the home without having
Very
to travel
cool.
through neighboring
Nice.
properties or across the street.
Yeah, very cool.
So
You just never know what you're going to get into, which is why it's good to have someone
Right.
who can take a look. And I would think that initial look at the land is going to be probably one of the most important parts.
yeah, and that's where we do a lot of the homework and digging. And I enjoy it so much because
You nerd out on that. I nerded out watching a
I do
sewer be
nerd
dug
out.
today.
Yeah.
I was watching a sewer be dug, and the
Yeah.
Delaware County guy is like, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like a 4-year-old boy with all
Yeah.
the backhoes.
Just don't
and
mind me.
all that stuff. I'm like, I just learned to watch.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's the first time I've seen him install a sewer.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a little orchestra. Like everyone knows when to pull up, and then
Right.
the city guy knew. I'm like, how do they know? And
Yeah.
they're like, they just know.
A lot of logistics, coordination.
crazy.
Those individuals can look at something and just know where they need to be and what goes on next. And
I
you're
had
right,
to
it is
watch
like
him
an
pump the
orchestra.
water out so that the
Mhm.
guy could get down in there and install the drain and tap into it. And I'm like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
I'm like, you do this every day? He's like, yep, every day. And I'm like, I hope you get paid well. He's like, I do. And I'm like, okay, good, because this is not a job that everyone would want.
It takes a special breed.
So it's kind of cool when you see what goes into the process of building a house. It's a lot and a lot of people.
Mhm.
So at least the construction provides a ton of jobs for people.
Yeah. And I try to, be aware and just remind even ourselves, but our team, that we do this stuff every day. Our
Mhm.
clients don't.
They don't, right?
And to take a step back and
Right.
walk them through the things that we know and we kind of tuck in the back of our brains, and it's like second nature to us.
Mm-hmm.
But our clients don't. To
Right.
bring that stuff up,
Like
and
different
never
terminology
assume.
and stuff
Yes.
too.
Yeah,
It's a different language.
Right.
It is. And like I've learned that even when people tell me, oh, I do this all the time, they really don't.
Mm.
So they may say that, but they really don't. And I just try to have people humor me, like, hey, just for my own sanity, just I got to go through the process.
Yeah, never assume.
Right. Because we've had people say, oh, we do this all the time and we don't need to do this or that. And then they are upset that they didn't do this or that. Well, we
Mhm.
told you 20 times to do this and that.
Yeah.
But, you can only do so much. But it's good that we all understand that you just don't do this every day.
Mhm.
And even buying and selling a house, I tell people if you haven't done it in 5 years, it's drastically different.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there's changes all the time. There's changes coming up in June. So,
Mhm.
they're just constantly changing.
Yeah.
So where do you guys predominantly build?
Our main office is located in Delaware, so just south of downtown Delaware and north of Lewis Center off of 23 on Grave Parkway. So we try
Okay.
to stay
You guys have been there
within-
forever.
Yeah, we moved there from Powell in 2011, and we found that we were having a really hard time in residing in Powell, having afternoon or evening meetings. Clients were setting up meetings with us, and then they would get stuck in traffic.
Because of traffic, yeah.
Yep. So we made the decision to migrate over to kind of the Lewis Center, south of Delaware area in
It's a
2011.
great location also. Yeah.
Great location. We built the building that we are in. So
nice, too.
it works really well
Would've
for
thought.
us.
Yeah.
As a building company. But that's nice where, we can go through the customization. It works really well for us. It's really centrally located. So to answer your question, we try to stay within a 45 to 60-minute radius of kind of that
That
central
makes
Delaware
sense. To keep the
area.
quality standards.
Keep the
same.
quality. We have project managers that travel to our job sites as well, but we also partner with the same vendor group and subcontractor group on all of our builds. So
Okay.
when you have that local relationship that we rely on, we can also
Because
maintain.
you know how they work.
Yeah, we know how they work. We know who's coming inside and outside of our homes. We can trust that they're going in there. They know our process. So to try to have that geographical presence and not overextend it, it allows us to still maintain a underscore on quality, our process, making sure that we're getting out to the job site. We're verifying that things are getting done, going in, happening. So we see that within that 45 to 60-minute radius of that Delaware area. So we've done projects, I would say, down south in Grove City and kind of Winchester, but primarily we see them kind of stretching over towards Hilliard, Marysville, Marion County, obviously Delaware, but out east towards Johnstown, Galena, Sunbury,
Those are
Morrow
all
County.
popular areas, too.
Yep, New Albany, Granville, Alexandria. So I'm naming off the
Wow.
whole list here, but yeah. And because we do a lot of build on your own land, that's where the builds take us. We don't necessarily have, I would say, I don't want to say a luxury, but a choice to go, hey, if a client
Right.
has a piece of property, they own a piece of property here, and we're designing a home for that specific piece of land, it's going there. So to evaluate that on a per job basis to make sure it fits for our company, to make sure it fits and we can service the client and know that we're going to exceed their expectations, all goes into evaluating each job as well.
So the biggest obstacle on building on your own lot is the lot, finding the lot.
Yep.
Now, do you guys have access to some lots that are also in like subdivisions, but are like, bigger lots?
Yeah. We build in subdivisions as well. So there's actually a couple partnerships that we have with developers where we have access to the lots. We love those relationships because we don't physically have to, I would say, hold the lots, purchase them, carry them, and have carry cost on them through taxes and maintenance. And we love having those relationships as well because it makes sense for us. It makes sense for the developer. It also helps benefit the client as well. So we
Gives
do.
them options.
Yep, we build a lot in subdivisions as well. We've built a lot in, I would say, just kind of naming some out: Cliffshire, Oxford Woods, North Star up in Sunbury.
It's a popular one now.
Yep.
Took it a while, but it's a popular one now.
Parade of Homes was there back in 2015.
Yeah.
So I would say when it comes to finding land, you can't build a house without land. So that is a huge obstacle that I try to assist and help with on the client end as well, depending on where they want to be, what type of lot they want to purchase. And we have, I would say, I won't call it insider access, but the industry relationships to know what's coming up.
That's
what's
why you're
going
everywhere.
to be available. And you have to be everywhere or else they'll slip through your fingers.
Right.
In the, I would say, building industry, but real estate industry in general, it could be a matter of, if not hours, minutes, seconds sometimes, of who beats you to the punch, getting back to people really quickly, getting them answers.
My joke is that we always get business because we answer the phone.
Yeah. You wouldn't believe how many people call us up and go, hey, oh, wow, you picked up. Or, hey, you called me back in an hour or so.
Yeah.
Right.
And you just got to show up.
Yep.
But
It's really the biggest obstacle is answering your darn phone.
Yeah, or side rant, but nothing irks me more than, hey, you've reached the voicemail box of beep, 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 and this mailbox is full.
It's full, yeah.
It's like, I'm calling you for a reason, but that's a side note.
Yes. And on another side note, my iPhone is horrible at letting me know someone left a message or even called.
Yeah.
So it only likes up to 3 phone calls at once. It gets a little cranky after that.
Oh.
So I miss stuff. So my voicemail says, if you're reaching this, then
Yeah.
you may want to text me or call me again, because I may never know you even tried to call.
Yeah.
So
To
this
set
sucks.
that
It
up
sucks.
as a fallback.
Yeah.
Um,
So, because I don't like it when I don't get to people in time. It
Mhm.
just really makes me mad, because I know how I feel, because we know how many people never call us back, don't we?
yeah.
So say someone, and a lot of people don't understand when we talk about custom homes, they don't understand that it truly is a custom home. It comes
Mhm.
out of your head onto paper and
Yep.
gets put into a house.
Right.
So what is your process? Like when someone says, okay, Andrew, I want to build a house with you. What would be the steps? Like, are they putting down a down payment? Are they, before they go to design, you're going to go out to the lot first, which is
Yep.
good, because that's crucial.
Mm-hmm.
And then they can also write the contract on the lot based upon builder approval.
Yep.
Too. So that also gives people a little peace of mind. But then what else would they do? Because I assume it's all a little intimidating, especially when people don't understand custom is really custom.
Yeah. And there's so many pieces and parts and things flying at you at 100 miles an hour. So trying to take a step back and look at it at a very high level view or an overview very early on allows you to make sure you don't miss anything. But the biggest thing, like you mentioned, is finding land. But once you lock down land, it's starting to look at everything as a whole. You don't necessarily want to island stuff off and just look at your budget, or just look at your house design, or just look at your finishes. To try to pull those all in and manage those together is going to help you set yourself up for a successful build process. But I would say next most important thing is trust. Finding a trusted advisor who you've interviewed, you have the relationship with. There are a lot of good salespeople on the sales end of building side, where you get sold on something that isn't necessarily equating or lining up to what you receive.
Right.
So having that trust and transparency there on the build end is probably right up there, if not number one, before you even start the process. And then once you find your builder that you do want to work with, let them go to work for you. And that statement right there, let them go to work for you, it just underscores the trust aspect and level of finding someone who, when you ask them a question, you listen to their advice, you take what they say to heart. So once we get past that point, it's like I was talking about, the general overview of looking at everything at once, having those conversations early on where I know what question to ask, so I'll start pulling those answers out of people. Where do you want to build? What's important to you? How much do you want to spend? So when we look at your overall budget, we can start to work backwards. Sometimes clients will think that you should work forwards and start with a plan or start with a lot and then just worry about budget down the road. We try to outline that budget
If you
very
have an
early.
endless budget, then
Well, and it doesn't matter if you have an $800,000 budget or if you have a $3 million budget. It's still a budget. So I would say most people who want to spend $3 million, they're looking at it and going, oh, they're looking at pictures for a $4 million house.
That's what I was going to say.
Or a $5 million house.
Everyone will instinctively go over their budget.
But the part to try to mitigate that or avoid that, no matter if it's 800 or no matter if it's 3 million, is the process to get you to where you design your home, to where you have some idea of what things are going to cost, to get an idea of where you're going to build at. So you take your total budget, you subtract your build cost from it. When we meet on site, we'll get you an idea of what the site costs are going to be. And then once we have that residual value of your budget, your total budget minus your land cost and your site cost, we'll start to work at what is left for the home. And if
because people forget the site costs.
Yep. Yeah. And not every lot is created equal as well.
They forget all about it. And it can be, what I think average is 60,000. But it can be even higher.
Yeah, some subdivisions that we build in, if there's not as much site work that needs to be done, those can average around 45 to 55. Some of the build on your own lot site cost can be around, I would say, 65 to 85. And we try to be conservative there. We have a very detailed.
I like to overestimate.
Yeah. Yep.
That way people are happier when you come in under budget.
Yeah, and you still want to be. You want to be conservative. You want to be realistic, though, too, because if you come in and tell someone their costs are going to be $60,000 and they come in at 40, they're going to be a little frustrated because they could have used that, $15,000
the
to
budget
$20,000
size.
elsewhere.
Mm.
But
it's a delicate balance.
yeah, and to have we have a budgeted, or we have a very detailed budget template where if we know the house is going to sit back 200 feet, then we can go in and program the cost for a house that sits back 200 feet. 200 feet of water line, 200 feet of electric, 200 feet of trenching, driveway if we're looking at how wide it is.
That's pretty cool.
That's another thing as well. Yeah, that's very
That's
important.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
Especially on a flag lot or
Yep.
something like
Yeah,
that.
the flag lots will kill you.
Yeah, and
driveway.
you're getting everything
And
back
running
there.
all those utilities back. That's what I tell people. That flag lot, you've got this much room to run all this stuff.
Yeah.
It's
Or,
got to go all the way back.
trying to partner with neighbors within your community and try to
Oof.
share cost. But you still have to be careful on that, because if a neighbor puts in their electric on the other side, or you don't have access or permission to access the transformer that's there or the infrastructure that they put in through a driveway, you might not be able to do that. So you're going to still have to budget for those costs anyways.
Well, and we were looking at some land that basically you could tell it had been eminent domained at one time, because the freeway kind of runs through it. Sorry, my phone is annoying today. But there's a freeway that runs through it. So you own the freeway.
Yeah.
Is what it looks like. So you're paying taxes on the freeway and you own on the other side. But then some of them had no real way to get a driveway to where you would build on.
Yep.
So you have to rely on a boundary
There was
agreement
an
or an easement
from
agreement.
from the neighbor. So,
But it
which
still
was
looked
interesting.
weird, yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's good though, because at least you guys have experience in that, and you can tell people whether or not this is a good lot or not based on your experience and how those things typically go. So, you do construction to perm loans, right? So when would you actually? Oh, and this is another question I get asked. I get asked what's the average price per square foot to build. And I tell people, well, it depends. What kind of stuff do you want in it? It's kind of a hard question. And they're like, well, that's how builders decide price per square foot. Yeah, for certain things, but they're not budgeting in crown molding in every single room and all this stuff. So
Yeah.
it's
so many upgrades.
Yeah, it's just, you can put, you put Viking appliances in it, your price per square foot goes up. And
Right.
Yeah, there's outliers that can affect
Yeah.
that. Let's dive
Tons
into
of
that
them,
really
yeah.
quick, because all price per square foot does is it's an equation. It takes your total price, divides it by your square footage, and spits out an average of cost based off the square foot. So it's plain and simple. If you hear that, that's all it's doing. But
I can't tell, your average price per square foot to build could be completely different than your average price per square foot to build because of what you want
because of what's included.
Right.
Yeah. If we have
and you
a
could be
starting
using the
point-
same builder.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. Yep.
And people don't understand that.
Yeah.
It's we really don't calculate stuff on that except the initial build price.
Yeah.
Everything else above that, you can't really calculate on a price per square foot basis.
One of our partners kind of uses the term, well, do you go out and buy your car based off price per pound?
Right.
It's just a unit of measurement.
Right.
But there are things that we will include that most builders don't within their base pricing. So now you're budgeting that off of it. Or there are items within the build that don't even affect square footage. So if we have, let's say, a freestanding tub, we put a freestanding tub in the owner's bathroom, not a single square foot could be added if we install that, but it's still a cost that we have to budget for.
Right.
So those, we use it, I would say, early on to just get some rough ranges.
To get it rough, right.
And then once we have something tangible on the design end, where we have the details, we have the floor plan, we have size in terms of square footage, we have materials, we know quantities. Quantities are huge. A huge part of our pricing on our end is because we have quantity-based pricing from our vendors that we can use to derive a detailed budget.
Right.
So once we have those details in place, we throw out that price per square foot and then get to an exact pricing proposal or a cost estimate. And that way, you could be building at $275 from an estimate per square foot. And then once we go in and hard price everything out, that's down to the penny. And by the time we get to that point, it's really not I would say, estimate number. It's more of hey, here's what we're going to build, and let's start to push and pull what you actually want within the home.
Right.
So
To get their budget where they need it to be.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was telling them is the price per square foot is just a starting point.
Yep.
So you said that you include things that most builders don't
Mhm.
include? Like
Yeah.
what, for example?
2x6 walls.
Okay.
Our insulation package, instead of a bat insulation, which most people are probably familiar with, just the rolled up pink insulation,
Yep.
we're using what we call a blown in insulation blanket, where we are putting a breathable blanket on our stud cavities
Okay.
and blowing in the insulation so it gets around our utilities more efficiently. It produces a higher R value, which R value is just a measurement of thermal rating. So we're producing an R24 wall. I mentioned 2x6 walls on both the first and second floor. One of my most, I'd say one of my favorite things that we do as a standard is our exterior sheathing. So zip system we're using on the
Alright,
outside.
The zip system.
Yep.
What
That's
is the zip
actually
system?
so the zip system is becoming pretty popular. So it's to make it so that, and since we do get 178 days of doom and gloom in Central Ohio, it makes it so when you're putting this system on, it's replacing Tyvek.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So it won't have the same issues as Tyvek. Like when we had the tornado, like storms come through and the Tyvek rips off the house and is flopping
Yeah.
around and
It's infamous.
all that fun stuff. Right. The zip system is basically locked into place, and it makes the home more
Sealed.
more
Okay.
sealed, more water resistant.
Okay.
I want to say. Am
Yeah,
I
it's
right?
an air and water barrier.
And
So
water
it's an
barrier.
all-in-one integrated system where the
Okay.
Tyvek is actually 2 layers. You have
Yeah.
your OSB, which is just your oriented strand board. We're getting kind of technical here, but it's just your
It's-
wood board, and then the
Those of us
Tyvek.
that love new construction
Yeah.
love this stuff.
You can tell I'm nerding out right now.
I could totally tell you were nerdy now.
So, but yeah, it's the zip system is a single layer, so you don't
Okay.
have to worry about water or air getting behind it. When you're installing Tyvek, your OSB or your board goes up first, and then you come back after and staple on the Tyvek layer. So now you have 2
Staple
layers.
it on. And you're
Yep.
creating more holes.
Yeah,
too.
so you're creating more holes.
That's
Yeah.
know the thing.
We
I'm
love the
thinking
zip system too because it's more efficient. You don't have to. You come back and you tape over it, but you can install them quicker.
And you can
the-
work in them earlier than
Mhm.
if you had a Tyvek system and had to wait for stuff to dry or anything like that.
Yeah.
So it gets you into the home quicker.
Yep.
So
you
you can
waterproof
finish
the
them
home
quicker,
quicker.
yeah.
Nice.
You don't have that Tyvek, ripping off the home or blowing around to where if you did have that happen, well, now you have to send out a crew to correct
To
that.
repair that, yeah.
Now you're essentially being inefficient or wasting time on that end because that crew or that team could be somewhere else continuing to move forward on other homes and installing or working on other projects as well. So from a standard zip system is a core part of our build product as well. And a lot of the things that I'm talking about right here are items that once the drywall gets installed or once the siding goes up, they disappear. But they
Right.
don't necessarily disappear when you're talking about the performance
But they're
and
still
what they will
protecting
provide.
your home.
Yes.
Right.
They're still
protecting your
performing.
home.
They're still
Yes.
protecting the home. So we do put a high importance on that because we know that it's going to service us. It's going to service the client. So a lot of what we talk about when we're looking at things that we do that's different from other standard packages refers to the building components or materials within the home. So our poured foundations.
Which a lot of people, they just look at the home and they see what they see, right?
Mhm. Yep.
And like years ago, there was a builder in town who used a lot of what we called blue board.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, but underneath that siding that you see, you can literally take a box cutter
Yeah.
and just cut
Yeah. There are
around
still
the
builders
window
using that
and
today.
get right in. So the one that used to be infamous for it does not do that, and they're completely different now.
Yeah.
But when I sold against them, I would say, go look at the homes under construction. Look at the materials they're using. And I'm sure you do the same thing. Like, go
Yeah.
look at, Builder A over there and see how they're doing it. And then come look at how we're doing it.
Yeah.
So I always let the product speak for itself.
Yep.
And I didn't have to bash anybody.
Mhm.
You just let the product speak for itself.
Yeah, you put your best foot forward.
Mhm.
And in a world where you can edit or produce things and pump
Yes,
them
you
out online,
Abby.
you still want to be truthful, but it's to a point where you may not necessarily know what to trust or what's real. So I explain to people when you're walking through or you're seeing a model home, there's so much more that goes on behind the scenes. So walk through a house that's being built or under construction, or reach out to a list of homeowners or references.
Going to a
don't
house
listen.
that's a year old or
Yeah.
2 years old.
Yeah.
So there's another builder in town where I would tell people, go into a home that's a year old. View a resale before you think about building with them. Because they build completely differently than everyone else here, and there's a reason why they don't like real estate agents. So, it's just the quality. But so I would think for me and my husband, we would probably kill each other building a custom home. Unless he just let me do what I wanted, then we'd be okay. But I would think that, and I've known people who've gotten divorced over a custom build before, believe it or not. So to make it a little easier and a little friendlier on people who are thinking about building, do you have okay, hey, this is a popular layout, we can tweak this for you. Do you do those kinds of things too?
Yeah. So when we look at
hey, here's some stuff we've built before.
Yeah, and it's a range. It's a spectrum of how far do you want to take it. We can go super custom and draw from scratch, which I've done before. You really need to have a good grasp of construction, not only just the design, but how the house is going together when you start to get into that more custom realm, because you are ultimately working from something that is from scratch. How do things line up, or how you're going to access it, or how does it frame, or the framing components to it, and then to go to the other side of the spectrum.
Is it going to make sense once it's done?
So physics knowledge too.
Yeah, just the basic construction methods of how are you going to put it together when you hand it over to your construction team, and they're looking at the plans and they're going, who designed this thing? So to try to avoid those instances or scenarios when you're starting from scratch, a true custom end of the range or the spectrum. So when you go to the other side, we have over, I would say, 900, probably more than that, maybe 1,100 to 1,200 pre-designed custom floor plans that we have designed for clients and or built before. So I would say we have a very good batting average when we take deposit dollars or retainer for our designs to where we actually go and build the home. So to have that tool and that archive on our end where we can hand it over to clients who come through our system.
You have pictures too of the ones that you've built before.
Pictures of the homes we've built, show them the design, the layout.
Now.
Sometimes clients request a specific design item or a layout, and it may not be something that we would recommend, but the client wants it. So to go back and if that plan gets built again, show them what we might have done differently, or give them just some idea of what the plan looks like, how does the layout run from, or go from the inside. Interior finishes are more so customizable based off of what a client's preferences are. But again, having that archive and that tool on our end to show people, hey, not everyone kind of has the mind where they can just visualize things and draw it up.
Are definitely they have to see it before they can do it.
So some clients
create it. And
some clients will take a plan from that archive and just run with it.
Okay.
And then some clients will want to combine maybe something that they've seen or
Now, if they want to do something that's completely custom, then what do they have to put down to get that started?
Yeah. We take a design deposit. And that design deposit goes towards covering our architectural drafting expenses on the front end. That design deposit is $5,000. It gets credited towards the build price. And what we find when we work with clients is that we can get a plan designed, drawn, priced out much more efficiently, effectively, and less expensive, so cheaper than if a client was doing it outside on their own, because we know where construction costs are at. We know how to design the home. There are a lot of things that we're doing on the back end before we even send plans over to our architect and start chipping away at that design cost. So that's going to help them be more efficient. But
well, I would totally think, like that lot we were talking about earlier, I told him, you're going to want someone who can do everything. Who can tear down and send you that route and do all that stuff at
full
once,
service, turnkey.
Right, because you don't want one that will just, you don't want to go to an architect that's not familiar with the lot and have them design something for you that may not work on that lot.
Or doesn't have.
And you're wasting the money.
Yeah.
So you should just go to the builder who's already been on the lot, knows the topography of the lot, and can make what you want work and show you how and why.
Your jaw's going to drop when I tell you this, but I'd say 99, probably 98 to 99% of the plans that are drawn from an outside architect that are brought to us, I don't want to say don't get built, but they either don't get built or we're having to make modifications to them to either fit on the lot or make changes for what a client wants to put in the home. And the average cost, I would say, just by looking at it, we ask our clients, hey, how much did you spend for these plans if they're coming from an outside architect?
Probably 10 grand.
15 to 20.
Yeah. So, and honestly, I would have assumed that there's an extremely high, if not all, of the outside architect plans can't be built because the architect doesn't know really what they're doing. I mean, they know how to draw a house, right?
Yeah.
But they don't know the lot, and the two have to work together.
Yeah.
So you definitely need someone who knows both.
Yeah. And
to get it going and knows cost of things. Yep. The architect isn't out building houses every day. They don't know how much things cost. And it's kind of like, if I'm halfway through a sale and then I have someone who's not familiar with it take it over.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you can't really come in halfway through and think that person's going to be able to pick up the ball and run with it because they still have to get caught up and make sure it fits.
Yeah.
So, you definitely, I think, would have to go to an all-encompassing builder.
A design build firm.
Right.
And it's the managing and advising the relationship between what a client wants to spend, and then an architect of how they're going to draw it, how we're going to build it, what it's going to cost to build, and all those moving pieces and components are floating around, and the clock is ticking. We're either waiting on the purchase of a land, purchase of a piece of property, or it may take 6 months to a year to get that plan drawn outside of that, and while the clock's ticking, costs are rising. To get things moving in the right direction is extremely important on the front end. And sometimes clients ask, when's my dig date?
I love dig date.
Yeah, and it's a very exciting day. It's an emotional process for the client.
They get delayed too often.
Yeah, but you don't want to dig a hole and not have everything behind the scenes ready to go as well. So you don't want to dig a hole.
Stupid weather that usually delays it.
So when we dig a hole, our process is typically very quick. The hole gets dug, the foundation company is right behind, foundation gets poured, forms get stripped, and then our framers are on site. And it's a very quick part of the process because if you are slow
sometimes
and you're not efficient,
goes quick.
Yeah, you need to be, especially in, I would say, central high weather.
Okay. Yeah.
And they start at like 7 a.m.
Yep. Those guys are
crazy
workers.
They are.
So,
what were you
once we, I would say, work through that design process, contract signing, and then pre-construction, we go into the physical construction component or part of the build, which is one of the most exciting times
until
to be
you get
involved.
to the insides, because then people are always like, why isn't anything happening? Why isn't anything going on? It's just sitting there. No, there's really stuff going on. Like your electric's been installed, your plumbing's been installed. We're just waiting for the inspections. Like I always tell people, that's the part that drags the most.
Yeah, you can frame a whole house and run wire and pull wire through a home and put them side by side, and the framing could look like the world has been moved, and the electrician's sides are going.
It's like nothing.
Look at all I did, and it's like you can't do anything.
Right, because it's not fancy.
Yeah.
And then once drywall goes in, it seems like it picks up pace again. So people get happy then. But I always warn people about the slow period or what it looks like.
And in an industry where there's only so many contractors and vendors out there, and the world is small, and people talk to people, and who's good, who's great, and who's not so good and not so great, so that it's not going to be a process or a project where things are happening every single day, because things are happening behind the scenes. But to, like I was talking about earlier, have that trust in your builder to know that things are moving behind the scenes and they're keeping everyone on their toes to keep things moving forward as well is important too.
Yeah, you just got to set proper expectations too, and letting that client know, hey, this is really what's happening. There's stuff going on, you just don't see it.
Yeah,
I think that makes them trust more. Because again, you don't build a home every day. Yeah. So you forget how it goes. So I forget what else I was going to ask you. So would you say total timeline?
Yeah, I would say probably around 12 to 16 months, year to a year and a half. Some of our builds, when we're talking about just construction process, They can range. We're really flexible. We can do anything from a 2,000 square foot house to 8, 9, 10,000 plus square
I can't
feet.
even imagine a
Yeah.
10,000 square foot house.
So they're cool when you get to design them, but also
It would take forever
yeah. We actually
to
had
pick out everything.
right around an 8,000 square foot house from start to finish on the construction side, finished in 12 months last year.
Wow.
So again, having that gravitational pull when you only build, I would say 30 to 35 houses, you can keep your vendor base consistently, I would say, busy and employed, where they're not going off to other job sites that you can't control.
Right.
So to have that gravitational pull, but most of our homes are, I would say, between that 7 to 12 month construction process phase, and then total timeline a year to a year and a half.
That's pretty typical.
Depends on the project. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Pretty typical.
We
Right.
have some clients who, they might want to come through the trim process, and that's when you start to see the quality and everything comes together, and the trim walk happens, and the clients fall in love with everything within the home, and they'll add $30,000 or $40,000 worth of work, and that's something where we have to be aware of the communication that we're having with the client to let them know, hey, we told you your house was going to be done in 4 to 5 months or
This
3 to
just
4 months,
added
but
2
you just
months
added.
worth of-
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we don't want to, we could go out and hire another trim carpenter, but I would say if a trim carpenter is looking for work now in this building climate, they're
It's
probably
not pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of funny because it is true. If they're looking for work, they're either brand new or they're not very good at what they do.
Yeah.
So it's kind of how it is with plumbers and everybody. If they're looking for work, something's not right. The red flag should be.
Trust your gut.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of our contractors and vendors have been with us for 20, 25, 30 years.
Wow.
I joke with people. We have a golf outing pictures within our main office in our hallway, and it dates back to the 1990s. And you look at the continuation.
Same
of
faces.
Same faces.
That's pretty cool, though.
Rod and Jamie and his dad, and it's wild. So it's things that you really don't. I mean, hear nowadays when you have a lot of turnover,
Right.
or it's just kind of hit, skip, and burn, and people just are in one job site and out to the next. So to highlight on that, to go, do you really want someone who doesn't have the experience, or they're not busy enough?
Right.
So.
And it's the same as realtors. You want realtors that are busy.
Yeah.
But okay, and then I do forget, what does P&D stand for?
Partners in Design. So to go back.
Partners in Design.
Yep.
I thought it was names because I know
That's what I thought.
DeWalker's last name was Dillon.
Yep.
So I always kind of thought that the
It
D
was.
was for, oh, it was?
Yep. So a little bit of background and history
Okay.
of P&D as a company. Started in 1962. So we're going on, was that 62 years in 2024? So to bring that back to 1962, Dan's dad, Richard Dillon, founded the company in 1962. He partnered with a gentleman whose last name was P. I believe it was Pozecki. And funny story, about a month later, that gentleman decided that he did not want to continue in the building industry anymore.
Interesting.
Oh.
And he left, and Dan's dad kept that name ever since. So he passed away a few years back, but I don't ever think he probably would have believed that his building company would have been here. P&D Builders, that
Right.
name would have
That
stuck
long.
for as long as he did. And Dan, would tell stories about his dad, but he would say that man did everything. He just had so many hands in different areas, and
Nice.
but yeah, the continuation there did stand for
Dillon
Dillon.
was the
Yep.
okay.
And
okay.
then I would say probably about 20-ish years ago, Dan actually branched out and brought a couple partners in. So that's a great thing about our company as well, is we have a lot of diversification in ownership, where you're not just working with a sole proprietor or owner. So to have a lot of different mindsets and experience there, they have, I would say probably over a century of experience combined alone within those 4 individuals, where we're talking about, behind the scenes. Those individuals are behind the scenes kind of orchestrating everything that's going on as well, which speaks a lot to the referrals that we get and the recommendations as well. But yeah, Dan brought in Ed, Mac, and Darren, probably about 20, 25 years ago.
Oh, okay.
So
Nice.
Okay. So, will you
story.
tell everybody how to get a hold of you?
Yeah. You can reach out to me directly. My cell phone number is 216-501-8135, and we are centrally located in Columbus. I still have a 216 number, born and raised in Cleveland. I haven't switched to the 614.
I was
or
born and raised in Vermilion, Ohio.
Yeah.
And we used to have a 216 number, and then
Yep.
they changed us to 440.
Yep.
So-
Good old 440.
Yeah. But I still love when I hear the 216, so
Mm-hmm. So,
it just takes me back to
haven't
home.
changed it yet. You'll see it on my signs all
Yeah.
throughout.
I like it, though.
But yeah.
Numbers can go everywhere with you now. So,
Yeah.
and now I don't even think you can get 614. It's some weird number. It's like 9 something.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
937?
It's no,
Maybe.
it's different.
Oh.
And I think there was like a 345. Is it a 614 now?
Really?
Yeah. So they ran out of 614 floors.
Got some trailblazers.
So anyhow,
But yeah.
but thanks for coming on today, and then thanks everybody for listening or watching, however you choose to get your podcast. We appreciate you listening to us. Sorry. And make sure to follow us or subscribe and like us at Shannon Grimm Realtor on all social media, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.